go over your background, how you got into banjo, why you kind of went down the clawhammer route?
Sure. I grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota, not exactly a hotbed of old time music, not really a hotbed of bluegrass music either. There was enough of a bluegrass and old time music community up there when I was still living there to get me interested, but it was a small community. That's kind of changed since I moved away from the Twin Cities, and now it's a surprisingly happening place for being so far from the Southeast. But I didn't have this music in my family, especially growing up there. It wasn't around me in the community. I happened onto it totally accidentally in elementary school when I happened to be in the homeroom of a guy named Don Payton, who was a lifelong old-time and bluegrass music enthusiast who brought his instruments into the classroom to share with his students sounds that he figured they'd never heard before. My parents were both classical musicians. My dad made his living as a violinist for the Minnesota Orchestra, and my mother was always a serious classical piano player. So I had that in my background, like in the whole background of my growing up. And that was really the only music that they listened to, that we listened to at home, classical. They put me in piano lessons when I was really young. I liked it well enough, and I liked classical music well enough, but it was hard for me to make any kind of music on any kind of instrument from reading a page. And yet I didn't know there was any other way to make music until I saw my fourth grade teacher, Don, playing these really compelling melodies on a variety of interesting instruments without looking at a scrap of paper, just playing what was in his head, playing what was in his heart. So the combination of the melodies and the sounds of the instruments and the way that they looked, and then not having to be confined to what was on the printed page, just hooked me. And Don showed me some things on the mandolin first during recess periods at school. He let me borrow his classroom mandolin to take home over spring break and show my parents what I had been learning to do. They saw my interest, got me a little mandolin, got me some bluegrass mandolin lessons. And one thing kind of led to another. I found myself liking old-time fiddle tunes on that instrument more than I found myself drawn to bluegrass standards or hot solo breaks or that sort of thing. So I was learning mandolin from Brian Wickland, who might be a name familiar to listeners out there. He's a great player of all of the instruments, more bluegrass than anything else. But at the time, he was just starting to learn clawhammer banjo. And he would sometimes play another instrument with me in the lesson while I played the mandolin, just to give me a little more context for what we were doing. And the moment he pulled out that open back banjo and started playing in this very different way than I had heard at any of the local bluegrass events my parents had taken me to, I thought, that's it. That's what I want to do. Forget about this mandolin. Let's leave the piano behind altogether. I just found the blend of melody and rhythm that's unique to the clawhammer banjo style so compelling. And even though I was enjoying playing the mandolin with other people and enjoying playing it with Brian in our lessons, it didn't seem like the sort of thing I would get as much enjoyment out of by myself. And I knew that I didn't have endless opportunities to play bluegrass or old-time music with other people because I was still a young person. I didn't have a way to get around. The music community up there was kind of small. The clawhammer banjo seemed more self-contained in a way, with this driving rhythm that's like an undercurrent for everything that's played, but as much melodic detail on top of that as the player wants to put in. So it seemed in a lot of ways a better fit for the situation that I was in. And I kind of got into it and never looked back. I took about a year of lessons, weekly lessons, with someone Brian referred my parents to in Minneapolis, a woman named Marianne Kovach, who's a wonderful banjo player and a font of knowledge about old-time music. She was never into bluegrass, as far as I know. And then she sent me away from those lessons with a cassette recording that she had made that was like an anthology of her own, of old-time banjo from yesterday and today. This was in the mid-90s today. And a different player was on every track, and she basically encouraged me to listen to that, and any player whose approach spoke to me, go seek out more of that player's music. And go put myself in situations with old-time fiddlers where I'm having to follow tunes that I don't already know, and I'm having to kind of make quick sense of this stuff on the fly. And I've kind of been following her advice and her instructions ever since. It's just been a joy, and this is the focus of my life in a way that I think it never would or could have been if I hadn't had that chance encounter with Don and his old-time and bluegrass music in 4th grade. I'm so grateful for the circumstances that I was in.